Good morning, folks. Mike's MMA Picks here, discussing fight morning breakdown for UFC Paulo. We've got 14 fights ahead of us. Should be an action-packed card. Very excited for this one. A number of changes in the main event. What I'd like to do here is spend a couple of minutes for each fight. This isn't a in-depth breakdown. I realize the other podcasts are out there for that. And I just wanted to share a few of my takes on some of the fights. I got my homework done early last week for this card and kind of sat back and wanted to hear what everybody had to say also. And we've got a card in Brazil with a lot of Brazilian fighters. I expect a number of these fights to end inside the distance. We've got a bunch of huge mismatches here, at least on paper. And we'll kick things off first with the first fight of the night. One of the worst fighters in the UFC, Alex Chambers, 39 years old. She's been around the block, comes in with a 5-4 professional record, taking on a Renata Souza, who is in a showcase matchup here. This, we've got a volume striker with Souza, who has a great ground game. Not even worth breaking down this fight, to be honest. Souza should roll here rather convincingly, and I expect her to win this fight via submission, hopefully early, so she'll rack up a lot of DraftKings points. But at $9,600, that's a pretty high price to pay. She may do that, though. We'll see. But Chambers, my fate of the night right there. Then we've got a barn burner up next. Zaleski dos Santos, who I've seen fight live, is fighting Luigi Vendramini. Vendramini, only 22 years old, looks impressive when I watch the tape on him. What I like about doing this breakdown now also is the weigh-ins are done, and sometimes we can get a feed off of that. And during this particular weigh-in, you could see a tremendous size disparity between Dos Santos. He looks like he's fighting a kid, but don't let looks throw you off, because we've seen other fighters who don't look like the prototypical world beater come in and win. But this is a short notice fight. Dos Santos is a phenomenal striker. He's willing to, what I love about him is his blood and guts mentality that he brings to the cage. Every fight with him is going to be a war, and just pay attention when you're doing fight study. Pay attention to how fighters end their fights. The last 30 seconds of each round, he pours it on, leaves nothing left in the tank. And for $9,500, Dos Santos is a pretty good play. I think he'll fly under the radar too. Vendramini, he's one of those cases where we don't really know what we're going to get. How long is he going to survive? Is he going to be one of those fighters like Son on the last card, who survived and put up a good fight for a fairly cheap price tag on DraftKings, right? But I've got to go with Dos Santos here inside the distance. Next up, we have a retirement fight. We've got Thales Leites against Hector Lombard. Leites, we've seen fight. He's had a few stints in the UFC. Both of these guys are coming in via old man status here. Leites he was winning against Hermanson early, and then just kind of blew his load. And I see the lines flipped here. He was an underdog, and now he's the favorite against Lombard. With Lombard, you have to worry about his first round. Typically, he comes out like it's a barn burner, slobber knocker, as they say. Man, so Lombard, I've been listening to interviews with him. He left town, went to Sweden. He's coming off of a loss to CB Dalloway, although we all know he won that fight. And Dalloway should be done with the UFC at this point. This fight, though, I got to be honest, this is a toss-up for me. If Leitis gets out of the first round, I see him coming through via decision. I don't see how, with Lombard's judo background, how he's going to be able to get this fight to the ground. But maybe there's a way he can move this fight to the cage, somehow take Lombard's back. And if there's going to be a finish here, it would be Lombard by strikes or Leitis by submission. We'll see what happens in that fight. But this is one of those fights that you may want to split your shares for DraftKings purposes. Good fight, though. But I'm going to actually go with the who was once the underdog. I'm going to go with Leitis. Now he's the favorite, but I believe he wants this one a little bit more. Then we have next up Mayra Bueno Silva against Jillian Robertson. Robertson coming in from ATT with a 5-2 overall record, taking on the undefeated Brazilian who is coming in off the Contender Series win. I think Robertson is the real deal here. She doesn't screw around. That's one thing I like about her. She shoots for the kill, and it's going to happen on the ground in this fight. I know we're expecting a lot of Brazilians to win, but I don't see Silva coming through here unless Robertson puts her face in or her head somewhere it shouldn't be. But Silva, I know she showed some high level, I believe it was a ninja choke that she secured before or for the finish in her fight. But look at who she was fighting. She was fighting against a 37-year-old, someone who had some time on the regional scene. So I don't put too much stock into that. And the Augusto Sakai fight later, as we talk about that, I have some question marks there as well. But I'm going with Robertson here. Next up, we have what possibly should be a retirement fight, but isn't. We've got Sergio Moraes against Ben Saunders. Ben Saunders coming in with after a devastating win over Mr. Ellenberger. What can we say about him? He stuck around a little bit longer than he should, and I think Saunders has as well. Saunders, we know it's dangerous to get into his guard. He has that rubber guard. Man, he's taken so much damage, and we didn't really get to see that much of him against Ellenberger. Before that, he had that, man, he went life and death with Joe Ban. I thought he was retiring after that. I was surprised he came back. Moraes doesn't really, he's not the most technical striker, world-renowned jiu-jitsu practitioner. I hope this fight ends up taking place on the ground, but I do realize that Moraes also throws some heavy shots. I was surprised the way he was able to land on Tim Means. Even though he wasn't throwing punches and bunches, he was still landing and somehow came out with that split decision victory. And this is one of those places, you know, you're down in Brazil. If this goes to the judges, you're playing with fire. But this fight should end inside of the distance as well. I'd like to see, well, I'm expecting to see Moraes come through here. We'll see what Saunders brings to the table. I I suspect he's going to try to keep the distance. And if he does get close, he's going to engage in a clinch battle. But Moraes isn't a guy you want to do that with either. So good fight. Looking forward to this one, and also for DraftKings purposes, very relevant. Next up, Augusto Sakai against Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman, he's had a bad rap, but this is a blood and guts fighter here who does have a suspect chin. We know that. He survived against Willis. He's had some knockout losses to Shamil and a number of other fighters as well. Man, even Coulter had him hurt a few times. So he's coming in on short notice against Augusto Sakai. Sakai is, man, if he took care of himself a little bit better, I would be more apt to jump on that train. But he fought a month ago on the Contender Series against someone who doesn't have the best credentials. Let's just put it that way. Sakai's going to have a weight advantage. One thing I like about Sakai is he does seem to have a chin on him, and that he is able to sustain some damage. But for DraftKings purposes, I am very worried about this fight because of its slow and low output. Is this fight going to hit the ground? How is it going to get there? Obviously, Sakai, I believe, has advantages there. Sakai also throws heavy leg kicks. Sherman is, you know, he might be a desperate man. You know, he is on the last fight of his contract. He's money hungry. We know he's willing to put it all on the line and get knocked out. So big question mark fight here. But I do like Sakai to win. Sherman, though, you know, he's one of those lower priced DraftKings fighters that you're going to need one of these lower priced guys to come through for you. And at 7,400, he may not be the worst play. We'll see. I'm really interested to see what these contests look like. And man, those tickets to the McGregor-Khabib fight next month, that VIP experience is looking pretty good. So I hope someone I follow or someone who follows me ends up winning that. And pretty amazing stuff. So Sakai is my pick there, but I wouldn't. I'm not counting Sherman out yet. And also the line's pretty close too. I believe Sakai's minus 200 at this juncture. Then we have Luis Henrique against Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann, 27 years old, fights out of a camp in Texas that's been getting a lot of publicity lately. They've had a number of solid fighters coming out of there. Spann is a fighter who uses his length well, although if things get tight, I've seen him lock up submissions before. Luis Henrique is dropping down from heavyweight. He's a guy who's been fighting at around 255, 245, and now he's coming down to 205. He did look great on the scales yesterday. This is another reason I like doing this breakdown on fight day, because you know you can soak up all that knowledge and then get ready for these tilts. But I was concerned about capping this fight before I saw the weigh-ins. And Luis Henrique taking this seriously. He's been knocked out by very stiff competition. I mean, how can you get on his case about getting knocked out by Ngannou, really? He looked good against Tybura a few fights ago, and I like Henrique in this fight as an underdog, I gotta be honest. Spann, though, if he uses that range well, and we've seen he does possess power, I just wonder how ready he is to get it done here. And he knows that Henrique is going to try to be coming to take him down. So what is this takedown defense like? Let's find out. I realize Alex Nicholson was having significant success against him in the stand-up department. This is not Alex Nicholson. Henrique likes to wing hooks and also throws uppercuts as well. So I'm surprised. I'm actually not surprised the line is closing, but I think it should close closer than it is right now. So I like Henrique as an underdog play. Next up, we do have a retirement fight here. We've got Evan Dunham against Francisco Trinaldo. Man, tough fight to call. Evan Dunham has shown signs that it's time to hang him up. His first couple of rounds against Benny Dariush were very alarming. I was actually surprised that he survived that fight. He's been in a number of wars throughout his career. The recent loss to OAM, I don't give him too much hate for that, because he did absorb. We've seen when fighters take those knees to the belly, it takes the wind out of you, and you go searching for cover. And he tried to do that, but it was too late. Man, so Francisco Trinaldo is the ageless wonder. He hung in there against an evasive James Vick. We saw. I wonder how things would have turned if Vick would have engaged Trinaldo. He played it safe, trying to get out of there with a victory. This was James Vick was playing it safe to get out of there with a victory. But man, Trinaldo in Brazil, it's hard to get the job done against somebody like that. You know you're going to get Trinaldo's A game. He very rarely comes out flat. Evan Dunham, he's checked out, and that's dangerous, man. That's very dangerous. When it comes to price tags, though, for DraftKings, Trinaldo at 8,900. I could see him finishing this fight, and that may be a sneaky play for GPPs. But the inside the distance odds here aren't very good, and we've seen that somehow, some way, Evan Dunham's been able to survive. If this was a young Evan Dunham, I would be more apt to play him in DraftKings for 7,300. But man, I don't know. I've spent the past few days really hung up on this fight, because I do like Dunham's game. I like that he's a southpaw here, and that the odds are pretty close. And I will have some shares of Evan Dunham, but Trinaldo, he should come away with a decision victory. We'll see what happens. That's why they make the fights, they say, right? All right. So let's keep rolling here. We've got Charles Oliveira against Christos Giagos. Charles Oliveira is sitting at a minus 400 or minus 410 at your books right now. We know exactly who he is. I don't have to sit here and explain. But bottom line is he should lock up a sub at some point. I don't see him breaking in this fight. He looked really solid against Clay Guida in his previous fight on short notice. I wonder what he's learned from the Felder fight. What I'm looking at, though, inside the distance odds, I think Oliveira opened at minus 190 inside the distance. And it might be up to minus 225 or 260 or something like that right now. But I see Oliveira getting this done. The only issue is he may end this fight prior to racking up significant strikes or landing a number of takedowns or getting knockdowns. So he might not put up a huge DraftKings score. 9,400, that's a high price to pay for Oliveira, even though I could see him being played in cash. But if you do want to take down one of these tournaments, you may want to avoid him. And Giagos 6,800, the guy looks the part. He looks like he's ready to roll. He's suffered these losses. He's been grinded out before, And for fighters who this has happened to, I wonder if they learn from their mistakes, and if they go back to the drawing board, and if they, fix their deficiencies. So if that is the case, and Oliveira somehow gets tested, and the thing is, though, Giagos, to me, he doesn't possess fight-ending power. But if it's going to land on someone, Oliveira is the person you'd want it to land on, because he has been known to quit. But long story short, I'm just, this is just patter here, just chatting, and I think that Oliveira is a safe play in cash games. Nothing like a morning brew. All right, next up, we've got Randa Marcos against Marina Rodriguez. Marina Rodriguez, Muay Thai fighter, 31 years of age, comes in with a 11-0 record. She is the favorite. She has some wins on the Contender Series, and also in Brazil at Shuto and Thunder Fight. This is one of those cases where styles make fights, and Randa Marcos, at 33 years of age, the Canadian, is coming in here looking to ground her opponent and make this a wrestling expedition here, or exhibition. I like Marcos in this fight. I think that she can make it ugly. And my concern is, if it does stay on the feet, she's going to be outmatched. But how much are you paying? You're paying $8,200 for Rodriguez, and that's not a very high price to pay for her. If she does come through, she should pay off her price tag if it stays standing. But Marcos isn't going to let that happen. She's going to want to take this to the ground at $8,000. I suspect we'll see a lot of Marcos in cash games out there. I don't see her getting a finish. I don't see this fight finishing. This might be another one of those women's fights that goes the distance. We know how those happen. So. 8,200, 8,000 respectively. I don't think this fight is going to end up being in an optimal lineup, but let's find out. Next up, we have a fight that is, I think, going to make the difference in a lot of GPPs and cash lineups out there. We've got Renan Barão against Andre Ewell. Ewell is 13-4, 30-year-old, fighting out of LFA and also King of the Cage. He's got a significant reach advantage, also height advantage here. Height doesn't help you, though. He's got some glaring deficiencies in takedown defense. Also, his opponents have been suspect. You're getting a Renan Barão who is a shell of his former self. I've tweeted a number of times about how he, USADA and other issues have been concerning to him. I wonder if he sees a sports psychologist. I think he should. He has tremendous talent for a few minutes, and then he folds, he crumbles. Kelleher, lots of respect for that guy, but it was so obvious who wanted that fight more. Kelleher, he was willing to die to win that fight, and Barão wasn't. I wonder, even though Barão is, he missed weight, he's coming in about 6 pounds heavier. A third reason I like to get this first podcast out late, right before the fight started, is because we're able to see, a fighter who's missed weight significantly is, what is his motivation? What's going on here? Why is he coming to the scales heavy? We know he's had a tough cut to 135 before, so someone in Barão's corner needs to tell him, do whatever it takes to get this fight to the ground and end it quickly. That's what needs to happen. If Barao stands with Ewell. I don't think it's a smart idea to do that. He doesn't have to do that. I don't know why he would want to do that, to be honest. But Barao is minus 160 right now. He opened at, I believe, minus 350. I understand how people don't trust Barao at 8,500, but I think that he could surprise a lot of people here. And Ewell, if this is another big question mark fight, if Barao shows up, and we know he's a shell of himself, but if Ewell is able to take advantage of that, then I believe we will have a GPP winner on our hands. So my pick is Barao, though. I think that if he loses this fight, I will get off of the Barao train, but I see him coming through. Someone's got to get into this guy's ear. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. We got 1, 2, 3 fights to go. So Antonio Rogerio Nogueira is fighting against Sam Alvey. Rogerio Nogueira, I saw him fight against Sokaju back at Pride 33 in 2007, and talk about taking the life out of the building. It was incredible to be present for that when Sokaju came through as the biggest underdog in MMA odds history. I believe it or not, they took Sokaju off of the board at Caesar's Palace when I was there. All right, so Alvey is coming in with a 33-10 record. We know exactly who he is. We know exactly who both of these fighters are, to be honest. But the question I have is, how willing is Nogueira going to be the aggressor? And we know Alvey's a counter puncher, but is Nogueira going to take risks? If he is going to take risks, he's going to get knocked out. If he's not going to take risks, this is going to go to a decision. I think Alvey in GPPs is a sneaky play. This is Alvey's third fight of the year. We haven't seen Nogueira since he took a career-ending beating against Ryan Bader. I thought that was it. I thought he was finished, but apparently he wasn't. He had that, Nogueira had the knockout against Patrick Cummins, and you know, you're not going to knock Alvey out like that. I think Alvey is going to get the win, but my question is, we know from a DraftKings perspective, you know, is he worth rostering? I believe his price is $9,200. Yes, $9,200. That's a lot. That's a lot to pay for someone who's a low output fighter, who doesn't get takedowns, who he does possess fight ending power, but this might be a case where Nogueira gets hit once and his lights go out. Nogueira took one of the worst knockouts I've ever seen against Anthony Rumble Johnson a number of years ago, and I still couldn't believe he was fighting then. And so I'm rolling with Alvey here, but be careful. Be careful if you're rostering him in cash. I don't see a lot of people would be willing to do that, but he's a GPP play. Next up, we've got Alex Cowboy Oliveira against Carlo Pedersoli. Love this fight. Love this fight. But I will say Pedersoli, although he's a young guy, he's 25 years old, he's got a lot of heart. This is somebody who I believe is going to do his best to survive, to keep the distance, to implement a similar game plan to what he did against Brad Scott. Oliveira, though, I don't see him being comfortable staying at distance, especially on home turf here. I think that he's going to try to get takedowns, and my concern is Oliveira, we know exactly who he is as well. He's willing to take big risks. He's been reversed a number of times, and he, although in the Medeiros fight he gave up and tapped, but look at how much damage he was willing to sustain before he tapped. I mean, that was ridiculous. And he's gone up against a number of high-profile opponents. I believe Pedersoli is, he's just not ready for this caliber of talent of opponent. So I think Oliveira is going to get it done, but at, let's see what his price tag is, but Oliveira is 9,300. Oliveira may not get this finish. Pedersoli is a tough kid, and I'm not counting him out totally. So I think you may have other better spots to go than Oliveira at 9,300, but I would think is pretty safe because he's going to rack up a lot of significant strikes. He's going to go for takedowns. He's going to do whatever it takes. Whereas in the previous fight we discussed, Alvi, he's comfortable going to a split decision. He's comfortable putting his he's comfortable putting everything into the decision of the judges, and I don't know how he lives with himself doing that fight after fight, to be honest. There seems to be no real sense of urgency from Alvi. But that also gives him the counter opportunity. So back to the Oliveira fight. Pedersoli, I believe, will see significant ownership at 6,900, but he might be a good punt a nice punt for cash games. We'll see. Last but not least, we've got the main event of the evening. We have Thiago Santos Marreta against Mr. Eric Anders. Eric Anders comes in my eyes, pretty lucky, to be honest, to come out of the UFC Lincoln card with that knockout. I thought I was one of those people. I thought he was losing the fight, even though I had money on Anders to win inside the distance. We won that play. It was like grabbing something from the jaws of defeat. That was pretty amazing. So this fight, we know who these fighters are. Anders has been a carbon copy of himself throughout his previous fights. And I wonder who's going to be taking the center of the octagon in this fight. The odds have been shifting so that now Anders is a even bigger underdog than he was initially. There's a possibility that Marreta may come out and just bum rush Anders and get him out of there quick, but he's got time to prepare for this. I have a feeling we're going to see, I hope we don't see both fighters pacing themselves, but I have a weird feeling something like that might play out. If Santos does decide to close distance and get within range, he better be prepared for that counter left. Who is it? Good guy Greg, MMA Prophet. He made an excellent point that if you're preparing to fight for Eric Anders, it's one of the easiest things to do because he's going to do the same thing every fight. But if you're an aggressive Thiago Santos, I think that changes things. I think you're gonna bring the dog out of Eric Anders. I do think Anders, as has been said on previous podcasts, has the better chin. And the later it goes, I would hope to the heavens that somebody got into Anders' ear and said, you know, you have to change things up. Like, you just lost a fight to Lyoto Machida. You were about to lose a fight to Tim Williams. Let's show some sense of urgency here. You're definitely the one with the better gas tank. You might not be the most fluid striker, but there are other ways to win this fight. And if Anders makes this dirty and is able to stay inside and drain Santos, then we have a fight on our hands. But if he isn't able to do that, it only takes one strike for Santos to end a fight. And he could land a head kick, he could land a liver kick, he could land also a number of fight-ending punches. And also against Holland, we saw he wasn't afraid to go to the ground, but Anders, I mean, Santos, he isn't the best decision maker inside of fights. When it comes to fight IQ, he's willing to expend his energy rather fast. I think it was the Mershot fight. So many fights I've seen that he just he comes at an opponent with reckless abandon. He's good at being the nail, but or being a hammer, but not the nail. And he's not willing to sustain damage. So I actually like Anders in this fight, to be honest. But this is one of those fights where I think people are taking a risk, and if I don't blame people for stacking in cash, to be honest. And then you have to look at the price tag, too. You know, we play DraftKings every event, and there are so many choices. I mean, we're talking about 14 fights. That's 28 different fighters to choose from. And you've got Eric Anders at 7,600 and Thiago Santos at 8,600. Pay attention to the inside the distance odds as well. I know Vegas doesn't always get it right, but this opened at -475 to end with inside the distance, and I suspect it will end inside the distance, and that those odds have gone up, I believe, to -610 or something like that. But great fight to target. Either way, you got to be on one side of it if you want to take down a GPP. I would think. Stranger things have happened, though. So thank you for checking in here. You can follow me on MikesMMAPicks at Twitter. I'm also on betmma.tips as well as CapperTech. And this is the first time I've done this for a fight morning quick card breakdown. One of my goals was to keep this under 40 minutes. I think it's almost impossible to do that when you're breaking down 14 fights. I didn't get into the idiosyncrasies and intricacies of all of the fights, but my homework had been done about a week ago, and I've just been kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to do this. But I want to thank everybody out there for the support, and look forward to hopefully everybody cashing this weekend. And good luck in your contests. Enjoy the weekend, and UFC 229 is right around the corner, baby. Let's get it all day.